In 1950, West Bengal produced 27% of India's manufacturing output. Today, it has plummeted to 5%, while public debt has ballooned past 8.15 lakh crore rupees. Similarly, the per capita GDP dropped from 127% of the national average to just 84%. This contrasts with the state's historical identity. For over a century, Bengal was the cultural and intellectual capital of the subcontinent, producing globally recognized figures. Singapore's founding father, Lee Kuan Yew, openly stated his ambition to build a city that could rival the urban sophistication of Calcutta. To understand why Bengal's economic gears have completely seized, we must examine the specific institutional policies that ground them down over the past 70 years. Three distinct mechanisms drove this decay: the state-sanctioned weaponization of labor, a rent-seeking cadre network, and a fiscal policy prioritizing consumption. By examining West Bengal's historical trajectory, we get a rigorous case study in how targeted policies can systematically dismantle a fully industrialized economy. The initial trigger for the state's economic erosion was geographical. Looking at this 1947 map of undivided Bengal, we can track the region's most lucrative supply chain: the raw jute fields in the east, feeding directly into the processing mills along the Hooghly River in the west. Partition physically severed this network. When East Pakistan subsequently imposed heavy export taxes on raw jute, it starved the Indian mills of their core material. Unable to source supplies economically, dozens of historic processing facilities collapsed. The immediate human toll was severe. Massive waves of industrial workers were forced into structural unemployment, compounding the strain of millions of displaced refugees crossing the new borders. Faced with a massive unemployed labor base, incoming political factions recognized an opportunity. Rather than pursuing job creation, they organized this workforce and weaponized it against private enterprise. This strategy materialized through the Ghirao tactic. Organized union workers would physically encircle factory owners and corporate executives, often trapping them inside their offices without basic necessities for days until financial demands were met. Instead of enforcing the law and protecting physical safety, the state administration actively legitimized the extortion. Leadership explicitly labeled capitalists and industrialists as class enemies, declaring the Ghirao a valid form of union protest. Corporate boards reacted strictly to the math of the operational risk. Over 6,000 corporate enterprises entirely abandoned West Bengal. Global manufacturing heavyweights like Philips India and Dunlop shut down their regional facilities and moved their capital out. By legally protecting labor hostility, the state administration permanently destroyed its own industrial tax base and erased corporate trust. To manage the population over the next 34 years, the ruling CPIM government built a rigid, multi-layered institutional structure. This flowchart maps the resulting cadre pyramid, which utilized trade unions, youth wings, and local informants to control specific neighborhoods. As the diagram expands, you can see how basic civic functions were effectively privatized. If a citizen needed a local job, a ration card, or even to file a police complaint, they had to bypass official state channels and go directly through local party loyalists. This rent-seeking behavior choked free market expansion. Any open dissent or support for alternative political factions was met with economic boycotts and state-sponsored physical intimidation. The consequences of this system peaked during the 2006 Singapore crisis. Tata Motors attempted to build a manufacturing plant for the Tata Nano, aiming to revive the local industrial sector. The project was met with organized populist anti-land acquisition protests. After 80% of the factory was built, the operational environment became so hostile that Tata abandoned the investment entirely, relocating the plant to Gujarat. The political figure who orchestrated this resistance was Mamata Banerjee. She utilized the industrial collapse to build populist momentum, resulting in a 2011 electoral victory that ended 3 decades of communist rule. The transition was heavily branded as change, but the execution revealed a structural failure. The branding shifted, but the state's operational machinery remained identical. The new TMC administration did not dismantle the rent-seeking architecture. Instead, they simply absorbed the existing networks of underemployed youth and cadre enforcers into their own ranks, utilizing the same strong-arm tactics to maintain neighborhood dominance. The scale of this continued institutional rot is documented in the state's recent school recruitment scam. The Supreme Court nullified over 25,000 teaching appointments after discovering that state education posts were systematically bypassed in favor of candidates paying cash bribes. Executing a political transition without dismantling the underlying extortion network merely rebrands institutional decay. This environment of political protection extends directly to the state's porous international border, where unchecked migration is used to secure local political vote banks. This diagram outlines the pipeline used to regularize these individuals. The process moves from border crossing into designated safe houses, through the creation of fraudulent local documents, and finally integrates them into national registries like Aadhaar. Notice the critical bottleneck here at the local level. Municipal authorities and local elements actively bypass federal oversight to issue fake tenancy agreements and school leaving certificates, creating a paper trail for undocumented individuals. As a result, specific border districts like Murshidabad and Malda have experienced rapid demographic shifts, leading to recurring social friction over resources and representation. The security fallout is documented by federal intelligence. Without rigorous administrative monitoring, these communities occasionally mutate into operational safe havens, leading to incidents where mobs violently resist investigations by agencies like the NIA. When political loyalty and demographic engineering supersede the rule of law, state-tolerated violence inevitably escalates. The administration signals to local actors that if they deliver political utility, they are immune to legal consequences. We see the result of this impunity in severe breakdowns regarding women's safety. In cases ranging from Park Street, the Sandish Collie crisis, and the RG Carr hospital tragedy, local police and administrators repeatedly delayed action or attempted to cover up violence due to the perpetrators' political connections. When an administration protects its political machinery at the expense of basic civil security, state institutions lose their legitimacy. This raises a macroeconomic dilemma. Having driven away private enterprise and failed to generate large-scale employment, the administration still has to pacify a financially dependent population. Their chosen solution is direct consumption. To maintain voter loyalty, the state implemented recurring cash transfer and social welfare schemes. Looking at this breakdown of the West Bengal state budget, the fiscal imbalance becomes obvious. A staggering 45% of the total budget, roughly 1.8 lakh crore rupees, is dedicated strictly to funding non-revenue-generating social welfare payouts. As that welfare allocation expands, watch how it compresses the capital expenditure sliver. The state leaves itself virtually no capital to invest in long-term assets like industrial zones, power grids, or modern logistics hubs. Funding daily consumption on this scale requires continuous borrowing, driving the state's outstanding public debt past 8.15 lakh crore rupees. High public debt is not inherently dangerous if the borrowed capital is invested in productive infrastructure. But when debt is burned entirely on immediate consumption subsidies, it yields zero long-term returns. This fiscal structure traps the local economy. By intentionally starving future asset creation to pay for present-day political pacification, the state guarantees long-term economic stagnation. Reversing 50 years of economic decline requires an aggressive structural overhaul, not merely changing political personnel. First, the administration has to forcefully redirect capital away from consumption subsidies and into rigorous capital expenditure. Second, law enforcement must be decoupled from political influence. To restore investor confidence, the rent-seeking cadre networks must be systematically dismantled. Despite decades of policy failures, West Bengal retains world-class natural advantages. The Calcutta port remains one of the oldest and most strategically positioned maritime hubs in Asia. This map projects the region's actual logistical capability. By integrating the Eastern Dedicated Freight Corridor with the Sagarmala project, Bengal naturally serves as the primary trade gateway connecting India directly to expanding ASEAN markets. While the geography and the capital remain available, the current institutional environment lacks the basic trust required for investment. Restoring the state's industrial trajectory depends on an administration willing to swap short-term political survival for long-term infrastructure, private enterprise, and the rule of law.